Okay, so we just talked about simple probability, and now we're going to talk about compound probability. Simple events or simple probability is when one thing happens. This is compound probability when two or more things are happening. So it would be like if you walked up to your mom and said, "Can I have a Reese's and a Twix?" or "Can I have ice cream and a Snickers?" You are less likely to get two things than one thing. So on this spinner, it says the spinner is spun twice. Answer the following questions. So this means probability. So probability of spinning a 1 and a 3. So notice it's the spinner is spun twice. So we're looking for the probability of a 1 on the first spin and then the probability of a 3 on the second spin. So on my first spin, notice I only have 1 and there's 8 sections. So I'm going to represent that as 1 out of 8. Notice there's also only 1 3. So on my second spin, I have 1 3 out of the 8 sections. Because I want both a 1 and a 3, I'm going to multiply. Let me tell you why. This would be, like I said, the same thing if you walked up to your mom and said, "Can I have a Twix and a Reese's?" Well, you're less likely to get two things versus if you walked up to her and asked to get one thing. So multiplying fractions, you always get a smaller number. So 1 times 1 is 1, 8 times 8 is 64. Notice 1/64 is much smaller than 1/8. So when you want two things to happen, we multiply because you are less likely to get those two things. So 1/64 is our final answer there. The next one says a probability of an odd number. Well, odd numbers are numbers like 1, 3, 5, and 7. So on my first spin, I want any of those numbers. Well, that's 4 numbers out of the 8 sections. On my second spin, I want any of those 4 numbers as well. Nothing has changed, so I still have 4 out of the 8 sections. Now, it will make your life easier if you simplify this to 1/2. So notice it says combined probability. In other words, the combined probability of getting an odd number on the first and the second spin. So again, I'm going to multiply because I have a less likely chance to get an odd number on the first and the second. When I multiply, I get 1/4. Remember, to multiply fractions, it's top times top, bottom times bottom. So 1/4 would be my final answer. The next one says a probability of an integer less than 9. Well, integer is just another word for a number, so a number less than 9. Well, this spinner doesn't have any numbers bigger than 9. So all of the numbers are less than 9. So on my first spin, I'm going to have 8 out of the 8 sections because all of the 8 sections are less than 9. On my second spin, nothing has changed. So I still have 8 out of the 8 sections. This combined probability would be 8 times 8 is 64. So it would equal 64 over 64, which is 1 whole. That is the same thing as 100%. So we would say you have a 100% chance of getting an integer less than 9 on your first and second spin. If you look at the next one, it says probability of a multiple of 3. Well, multiple of 3 is 3, 6, 9, 12, so on and so forth. The spinner only goes up to 8, so we can't keep going. So we'll just use our 3 and our 6. On our first spin, we want either of these two numbers. So 2 sections out of the 8 sections. That can simplify to 1/4. On my second spin, nothing has changed. I still want either of those two numbers. So I'm going to say 2 out of 8 again, which simplifies to 1/4. Combined probability. So if I got a multiple of 3 on my first spin and then a multiple of 3 on my second spin, so notice I have a fraction representing each spin. I'm going to multiply because I have a less likely chance of getting a multiple of 3 on both spins. Top times top, bottom times bottom would give me 1/16. Okay, on the last one, I want a 6 and a 7. So on my first spin, we're going to say that I'm hoping for that 6. And on my second spin, I'm going to hope for that 7. So on the first spin, I'm wanting a 6. So that's going to be 1 section out of the 8 sections. On my second spin, I'm wanting a 7, so that's going to be one section out of the 8 sections. My combined probability, so on my first spin, I want a 6, so that's 1 out of 8. Second spin, I want a 7, so that's 1 out of 8. I want both things to happen, so I have a less likely chance, so we're going to multiply. 1 times 1 is 1, 8 times 8 is 64. So what you need to take away from this is that when you multiply fractions, you get a smaller number. So when you want two things to happen, you are less likely to get what you want. Therefore, you're going to multiply the fractions to get a less likely number, or a smaller fraction, I should say.